A few years ago, this was one of the most boring companies on the Malaysian stock exchange. It sold electricity, it cleaned sewage, and all this in another country, by the way, not even ours. Then in about 2 years, investors decided that it was worth more than 4 times what it used to be. At one point, the whole company was valued at 40 billion ringgit, roughly $9 billion US. It became known as an AI play, even though most of its money still comes from the least glamorous businesses on earth, pipes and electricity. So either the entire market has lost its mind, or everyone saw something in the boring stuff that the rest of us missed. And by the end of the video, you'll know which one it is. If you ask 10 Malaysians what YTL Power does, most will say electricity. They're not wrong, they're just looking at maybe a third of the picture. The real shape of the business is actually a little bit stranger than you'd think. In its 2025 financial year, YTL Power made around 2.55 billion ringgit in net profit. The year before, it made around 3.4 billion ringgit. Now watch where that money comes from by country. Singapore accounts for 54%. That's a power business called Power Seraya. It runs power plants that feed electricity into Singapore's grid, and it's been one of the biggest electricity generators on the island for years. The UK then accounts for 27%. That's Wessex Water, which supplies the water and treats the sewage for millions of people across the southwest of England. Malaysia only accounts for 15%. Yes, only 15%. The single biggest chunk of this Malaysian company is Singapore Electricity. The second biggest is literally British Plumbing. Malaysia, the home country, is actually third. Now, why would anyone get excited about electricity and sewage as a business? This sounds like the most boring investment ever. But boring has a superpower. Boring is reliable, which is great for business. People don't stop using electricity in a recession. Hospitals don't switch off, factories don't pause, and nobody in the entire history of the UK has ever decided to stop flushing the toilet to save money. And some of these businesses are even better than just reliable. Take Wessex Water. If you live in its corner of England, you cannot shop around for a cheaper water company because there isn't one. It's the only supplier in its region. Prices are set in agreement with a government regulator, and millions of customers literally cannot leave. This is about as close as guaranteed income that a business could get. It's so steady that in the most recent 9 months, the UK water business actually grew its pre-tax profit by more than 4 times, helped by approved price increases. Power Seraya works differently, but it leans on the same idea. Singapore is a wealthy island that runs entirely on imported energy and never ever stops needing power. Power Seraya is one of the big companies that actually keep that running. And that's the point. These businesses create recurring demand. Recurring demand creates cash flow. And cash flow, while it may sound dull and boring, is the one thing that quietly actually funds everything. For years, this is exactly what YTL Power was. Cash machine, wearing the world's least exciting outfit. In its 2025 financial year, it still made around 2.4 billion ringgit in net profit, or roughly $550 million US. Hold that number because we're going to come back to it, because it's about to start a fight with the company's valuation. There's also a third part of the business, and that's YES, the mobile and internet business under YTL Communications. For years, this was the part that people questioned. Telecom in Malaysia is brutal. You spend billions building networks, then everyone competes on price until the margins are paper thin. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. YES still loses money. In just the final quarter of the 2025 financial year, the telecom division ran a pre-tax loss of around 130 million ringgit, and the company expects losses in the region of 200 million ringgit for the following year. That's real, but here's the quieter story underneath the losses. While everyone was counting mobile subscribers, YTL was laying fibre, networks, connectivity, the kind of unsexy plumbing that it turns out an AI boom cannot run without. At the time, it looked like a struggling telecom, but today some investors look at the same assets and see digital infrastructure, the same cables, but kind of like a new use for it. This is the moment the boring company walked to the most exciting room in the world. In December 2023, YTL Power announced a partnership with Nvidia. Not a rumor, but an actual deal. And in October 2025, they finished the thing. In Kulai Johor, YTL completed Malaysia's first Nvidia-powered AI data center. The numbers here are genuinely big. The wider project is worth around 10 billion ringgit, or roughly 2.4 billion US dollars, split roughly half on the data center infrastructure and half on AI itself. The site spans about 1,640 acres. It runs on Nvidia's latest liquid-cooled GB2000 Grace Blackwell chips, the exact hardware every AI company on the planet is fighting to get. It was built in about 22 months, and the company says around 200 local startups are already plugging into it to build their own tools. They even used it to help launch Ilmu, described as Malaysia's first homegrown large language model. But here's the clever part, and it's why the market reacted the way it did. The hard part in the AI boom isn't always the software. The hard part is the physical building. A modern AI data center is a monster. It drinks electricity by the hundreds of megawatts, enough to power a small town. It needs huge amounts of land, and it also needs serious cooling because all those chips throw off enormous heat, and it needs heavy-duty connectivity to move data in and out. So the real bottleneck in the AI race, the thing that money alone cannot instantly buy, is power and land. You can order the chips, but you cannot order a power plant overnight. Data centers need power, connectivity, and land, and And those happen to be the three things that YTL has been hoarding for decades. It generates power, it owns land, and it spent years laying fibre. To make this site a green one, they're feeding it partly from a 500 megawatt solar plant, backed up by 600 megawatts from the grid. The company didn't suddenly become an AI company. The world just walked over, looked at its boring old assets and went, wait, we need all of that. But remember that 2025 profit? It actually went down. In its 2025 financial year, YTL Power made around 2.4 billion ringgit. The year before, it had made around 3.4 billion, and in the most recent 9 months, it slipped again. So what happened? And this is exactly where understanding the business pays off. Most of that dip came from the Singapore power side. The margins there tightened, and because Power Seraya earns in Singapore dollars while the company reports results in ringgit, a stronger ringgit made those earnings look smaller once they were converted back. Analysts who follow the company think that a good chunk of that weakness is temporary, or basically a normal breeding of a power business. Power is cyclical after all. It has strong years and softer years. This was a softer stretch. But here's why that matters. The boring utility engine had a quieter patch, and yet, over roughly the same period, this became one of the most talked about companies on the market, at one point valued above 40 billion ringgit. The earnings cooled, but the excitement did the opposite. Why? In the first 9 months of this financial year, YTL Power began reporting its data center business as its own separate segment for the very first time. That segment brought in around 408 million ringgit in revenue and 101 million ringgit in pre-tax profit over those 9 months, with profit growing more than 4 times compared to the year before. Now keep this in proportion, because this is exactly where people get carried away. 101 million ringgit is still small next to a company that makes billions. It is not carrying the business, not even close. But it is real money. It is the fastest growing thing in the entire group, and it is no longer just a slide in an investor deck. The AI story stopped being a promise and became a line item. That is the part that actually matters. So if we strip away the noise, forget the share price for a second, because that's the part that nobody can predict, and frankly it's the least interesting part about this story, what you're actually left with is a company that's doing 3 things at once. It runs essential utilities that throw off steady cash, electricity in Singapore, water in England, and it owns power, land, and connectivity in a part of the world that is quickly turning into a serious data center hub. And it is now running real AI infrastructure for real paying customers in partnership with the most important chip maker on the planet. The market clearly thinks that this combination is worth a lot. And there's even talk of YTL carving out the data center business out of its own separate listing, which tells you how much value people believe is sitting inside that one division. So here's how it settled the big question. YTL Power is not an AI company. Saying that out loud is still a stretch. It's an infrastructure company that happens to own exactly what the AI world is desperate for at exactly the right moment. The boring assets didn't change. The world's need for them did. So was the market crazy, or did it see something the rest of us missed? Honestly, it could be a bit of both. The excitement could have run ahead of actual profit, the way excitement usually does. But the thing underneath the excitement is real. Real power, real land, real chips, and real customers paying for them. And that's the part that I find genuinely fascinating. Whatever happens to the share price from here, the most boring company in the market spent decades building the least glamorous assets you can imagine. Then the most exciting technology in a generation showed up needing every single one of them. And that, I think, is the story. Not a company that chased a trend, but a company that accidentally spent 20 years getting ready for one. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do with that, because genuinely, that's not my job, and the answer depends entirely on you. If you like business breakdowns like this, click subscribe and follow me, and I'll keep you up to date with the next stories.